so that she can present on the topic. I know it's really exciting as we all plan for the next upcoming school year, so you all know how to just transition and communicate with your org.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Well, welcome everyone. I know Geeling, but Tim, I just met you. Matthew, are you in the same student org or a different one?
I'm in a different student org. I'm in Rocket Propulsion Lab, where I spend a lot of my time.
Okay, good. Can everybody hear, or is it my internet or other people's internet that's kind of freezing us?
I think it was yours that got cut out a bit.
Yes, I agree.
Then I can hear you.
Okay, good. Well, hopefully it stays with us because I have my husband upstairs doing work as well. So we're trying to share, even though that I have a plug-in if I need to go to another room. But nonetheless, my name is Jeanette Williams. I'm with the Gordon Center. We do engineering leadership. And so our idea is to not only educate, but equip engineer leaders to really have an impact on society. And that doesn't mean just in college, it means post-college, really. We're kind of grooming you guys now while there's lots of opportunity for trying things out and seeing what works, what doesn't work in your life. And then as you kind of evolve into your next best self, you're ready to go. So today we'll have a great opportunity to just kind of talk through succession planning is a term that you'll often hear when it comes to when you are going to get people to be in your pipeline to take your place. So if you think about it, we're always in that space, always be thinking about who could replace you. What are those people that, and how do you train them, groom them as you're thinking about those that are now taking on their new role. Over the next year, you have two roles, not only your current role as a officer, but then who's going to replace you. So constantly developing and helping those that are going to take your place get ready for it. So it's kind of like a soft way to kind of pass that over. So I'm going to share with you my screen, and I just put together a PowerPoint because we're going to do a fun assessment with one another. But let me get, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. Let me share my screen, and then we'll go to the agenda.
And then we did have one more student join us, Alan.
Oh, awesome. Who do we have? Okay, Alan, thank you, Alan, for joining us.
Yeah, Alan's going to be, yeah, Alan, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm the incoming president of Eta Kappa Nu, so I will be taking Jiling's place, succeeding her.
Okay, so I'll be working with you then
Nice.
after coming school year. Great, that's good to know. Good to meet you.
Awesome, awesome. So at any point that I start to break up, let me know, and I'm going to just change rooms because I can kind of see a little lag in mine, and I don't want this to be, so that's annoying as we go through this. So anyways, Gordon Center's here. We actually are going to be opening up our application process starting in the fall, and Geeling was one of our Gordon scholars, but the whole idea is to go through this program together where you're learning about leadership at a different level than just hearing about it. We're really trying to put leadership into practice, of which you guys are already doing. So we love to come alongside you as you're in this journey of growing as a leader, and how can we, continue to give you the tools and resources to really help mobilize a group of people, because that's really what teamwork is all about. How do you do more than one individual can do on their own? And so I want to kind of just find out, just as a quick pulse, how are you guys doing? I mean, now that, some of you are coming into your role, some of you are, finishing up this quarter, how's the feeling out there in virtual land? Virtual land is very quiet. Tim?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a little bit tough for me to stay motivated and get work done when I'm in the room the whole day sometimes. So like, sometimes there's like, I
Yeah.
feel like lazy and tired, just like take a nap, and I just like half a day passes sometimes. It happens, but still hanging there.
Yeah, sort of adding on to that, it sort of feels like now that we're sort of stuck at home, we're like constantly working. Like
Good
it's
point.
like, yeah. So it's like we're always in this space that we're working in, so there's not like that separation anymore.
Yeah, that's a really great point. I feel the same way. There's times where I normally like break up my day and I feel like it's just one big day. So I agree. What else? What else are you guys experiencing?
I've been learning new learning strategies. I found that for me on campus, it would be really effective to go to lectures, but at home, I find it more effective to read the textbook or look up additional course texts. So I've been kind of exploring what works best to be productive.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a great way to think about it. Kind of explore your learning styles. Nice.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the social interactions has also been affected, but a lot of student orgs are also trying to do new things like creating Discord channels and trying to have more events to help people connect. So we're also trying to find new ways to do that as well.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I'm working on an article that's talking about the connectedness of people, and it's just amazing how we really need people. Connectedness is a huge part of who we are, and why we do what we do. So I definitely think it's great that you guys are constantly thinking about ways to bring people into this new normal for us. I'm just Alejandra, I just entered another person in, so you should be seeing another person pop in. So moving right along, thinking about where we are now. So like I said, succession planning is about thinking about who's going to take your place. So always think about who those people around you that you can constantly be grooming, teaching, developing, so that way when you do take over, when you leave, so if you think about it in the position you're in now, you're holding both things, where you're going to go and learning from those leaders that are going to be leaving, but then also looking behind you to say, who are the people that you have identified as potentials that you could start bringing them in and developing them over the year, so that once again, the transition period is very smooth and quick. And so today we'll talk about succession implementation, because that's where we are right now. We're going to talk about preferences. We'll do a fun little assessment, and then I'm going to break you guys out to talk about your assessment. We'll have a chat session, and then we'll wrap it up. So it'll be really informal. This is the time, if you guys have questions, as I kind of go through the assessment itself. As you think about it, I want you to picture yourself as I'm talking about the different preferences, because one of the strong indicators of a good leader is to first know yourself. Know how you are and how you show up, when you show up at your best. All those things are important for you, because if you can set yourself up for success, then you have the capacity and really the availability mentally to set up success for others. So thinking constantly about you as a leader, but zooming out rather to the people that are around you. So like I said, succession planning is really about this. The goal is to increase your capability and comfort level as you assume your new role. So think about, taking on this new role, feeling comfortable as well, because it's not just about the capability. You can be very capable up here, but it has to be, you have to see it, you have to meet with people where they are at. So that's that level of comfortability. So when it comes to preferences, have any of you heard about the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator? It's an assessment that talks about preferences. Has any of you seen it or taken it before?
Yes, I've taken it.
Okay. Have you taken it before? You're down pat with your preferences, or you just kind of been exposed to it?
I've taken it a few times. I don't remember exactly. I have to look it up, which type that I got last time, but yeah.
Okay, no worries. Well, this is the fun thing about preferences. It's not a personality test. This is not an indicator of who you are as a person. Some of the keywords like introvert and extrovert. Extrovert doesn't mean that you're a loud person or very noisy or very chattery. Someone who is feeling, that doesn't mean that they're just all lovey-dovey, feely, and you know, emotional. But rather that's just, you know, their place of orientation. And then judgment does not mean that you're judging person. It's a word, a term about how you approach the world. So looking at these preferences, they're called pairs. So there are 4 pairs, and what it is it's looking at what each one means in different domains. So extrovert and introvert. So that's really where you get your focus, your attention, and where you get energy. So we're going to go through each one of these, and I'll allow you to, if you have a pen or paper or a tablet or whatever you want to write on, as we go through them, I want you to think about what are some of the things that show up for you. And it doesn't mean that it shows up all the time. So, you know, for instance, I find that there's a lot of people that are introverts when they don't know people, but then extroverts when they are when they're with people that they are comfortable with, if that makes sense. So, you know, the level of being comfortable is pretty big for whether or not they'll express themselves. The next pair of preferences is sensing and intuition. And this is the way that we take in information and the kind of information we trust or we like. So it's about sensing it, meaning more your senses, intuition being more that gut feeling. And so that not one is better than the other with these preferences. They're just a way that you take in and trust information. The third pair is thinking or feeling. So the thinking part is the way that you make decisions. And so think of it this way. Feelings does not mean emotions. That does not mean you're emotional. You only make decisions based on how emotionally you're feeling, but you're kind of thinking about people outside of you, as opposed to just thinking about maybe the circumstances or the data that you have. The last group of preferences is judging or perceiving. And once again, judging does not mean judgmental. It just means the way that you kind of frame or the way that you maybe take in or look at and the way that you approach the world. So these 4 preferences, you could be on a continuum of them. You don't have to be all the way on one side or the other. You could be spot dab in the middle. And like I said, it depends on the circumstances where you might flex in between a couple of or both pairs based on, like I said, circumstances, who's in the room, various things. So once again, it's about preferences. Any questions before I move on about the Myers-Briggs? Okay, so introvert, extrovert. So if you think about an extrovert, they're more outworld oriented as opposed to in-world oriented. So it's just how they're taking in how they're focusing their attention and how they're getting energy. The other is they're energized by interaction with people versus energizing by reflecting and just being by themselves, maybe out in the woods like this picture behind me. Openly expressive is an extrovert versus more privately an introvert. They want to think about it before they express it. And then also a preference for an extrovert would be more face-to-face. So right now extroverts are struggling because they want to see people, and introverts would rather maybe want this written communication or more of a connection point through different modalities of connection. Now I'm finding that because of this pandemic, a lot of introverts are turning into extroverts when it comes to wanting to see face-to-face. So just keep that in mind that, you know, like I said, things shift, it's just a preference. An extrovert talks out loud. So they talk it out as opposed to an introvert who thinks it through. And that is a challenge for a lot of extroverts. And let me explain why. How many of you have had someone on your team that talks a lot and they're talking this talk and that and this and this, and you're like, what do you mean? Where are you going? What they're doing is they're actually brainstorming with you through their mouth. So an extrovert actually, you know, thinks through their mouth versus an introvert thinks with their mind. And so just know that if you have a real strong extrovert in your team, sometimes just saying, are you extroverting on us right now? It kind of lightens the load, but it helps them to be able to express what's happening in their thoughts in a given time. But then it also allows you to know that you're not to respond or react to everything they're saying, but rather just they need to kind of flesh out their thought process. So just go ahead and take a moment just to write down if you think you're an introvert or an extrovert, and then maybe just jot down why or what makes you think that. All right, so I'm going to go to the next one. Just know that everything that you're going to be writing down, I'm going to put the students in a room together, so that way you guys can share about it face to face. Sometimes it's when you have an instructor or someone and we're recording, people don't want to share. So when you go in your breakout rooms, we won't be recording and you can share, okay? So just hold tight as we continue to go through this, and then we'll break you out so you can have fun talking about it. So I want you to also write down, when you take a break from work, fill in the blank. What do you do when you take a break from work or take a break from studying or anything like that? What do you find yourself doing? Okay, so we're going to move on to the next pair, which is going to be sensing and intuition. And this is the way that we take in and the kind of information we trust or like. And so when it comes to the sensing part, you're kind of grounded in present reality, where you know, you're focusing on what is and observable through your 5 senses. And then you're also taking note and remembering details, your preference, factual and sequential information. On the other side is going to be intuition, and that one is focused on maybe future or possibilities. It's also the finding patterns and meaning in information. It's more abstract and uses more of an imagination or imaginative. And the preference information is to be relevant to the big picture. So if you think about it, you know, what I'll need more data is one aspect of it, but then the other side is looking for opportunity. Now, just remember that that doesn't mean that you can't have both, and those preferences, it's just a little bit different depending on the circumstances. So go ahead and put down your pens for a moment, and I want you to go ahead and just cross your arms how you naturally do it. Everybody has their arms crossed. Just naturally cross your arms. So then what I'd like for you to do is I want you to uncross your arms and do it the opposite way. Can you do it? Yes. Does it feel as comfortable? Not so much. And that's really what preferences is all about. So can you have sensing where you're thinking about details? And then can you also zoom out to be big picture? Absolutely. Let me know if I'm frozen at any time, or if you guys have a hard time with my internet in particular. Okay. So go ahead and write down with your pen or pencil, or type it in. What would you think that you what side or preference would you think that you fall into? More of a sensing or more of an intuition? So then I have another question for you to answer and to write down. If you were to take your group on a vacation paid for the company, you start by asking, what is the budget or where we should go? What would be the first thought that would come in your head if someone says, hey, listen, you can take the group, we're going to pay for it. What would you ask? Which one of those questions feels the most natural, like almost like folding your arms? Okay, moving on to the next pair of preferences is thinking and feeling. And so the way we make decisions. So decision making, just know, is one of the Gallup poll is an organization that does a lot of surveying of organizations. And they found that there are 2 skills that a leader needs to have that are non-negotiable. One is to be able to work with multiple teams, and the second is good decision making. And so neither one of these are right or wrong, whether it be feeling or thinking, but just knowing some of the underlying preferences you have will help you to be able to not only know what your vantage point is, but maybe those around you that could help lend themselves to give you different points of view so you can help make fast decisions. So thinking, preference is more about objective, logical decision making, using causal reasoning, and really understanding what made something happen, and you look for what is wrong so you can fix it. On the other side of the preference is the feeling, and that's more subjective. It's value-based decision-making, like the right or wrong, kind of more of a, not a moral, but maybe an ethical kind of 2-pronged test. Consider the human impact of the decision, and also look for what is right so you can support it. So go ahead and write down, think about maybe which preference you fall into in terms of thinking or feeling. And then the next thing I want you to write down is what type of classes do you enjoy most? If you think about all the classes that you've taken over the last, 3 years or so, what are those classes that have really stuck out to you, that you really enjoyed? And then the second question I want you to answer is, if a friend or classmate is doing something that is bugging you, what do you do? How do you handle it? Our last set of preferences is going to be judging or perceiving. And this is really the way that we approach the world. And what I mean by that is it can be based on our preferences to work really hard for long periods of time and then have fun, or someone who likes to work and play throughout the day and kind of scissor it in. So someone who's judging would be more efficient and energized at the beginning of a project. So as soon as you get a task, jump right on it. You start getting it done. Stress at the last minute changes. You do not like last minute changes at all. You'd rather have everything done up front and then you turn it in maybe a little early, but no changes or anything needs to be done. You can still make changes, but not at the last minute. Organized and methodical, so you kind of set a deadline for yourself that maybe is a couple of days before the actual deadline, or you're really punctual on making sure that you get things done on time. You make plans and follow it. So those are pretty strict. You're kind of not strict in the sense that it's not flexible if other priorities come in, but you're pretty methodical in the way that you go about doing it. A perceiving would be someone who's most efficient and energized near the deadline. So this is someone who likes to be what they're called pressure prompted, where they like when the deadline's at 11:59, they're working on the project. They start at like 11:30 and they have 29 minutes to get it done. So they really enjoy that kind of almost like a mental high on seeing how fast they can get something done because they pushed it off to the very last minute. This person or preferences for the perceiving is adaptive and open to change. So once again, feels like you can change it anytime. There's not like too much structure to it. You know, you can keep moving around or change different things as you go. And then the other thing is preference leaving things open-ended. So kind of not overly committed to anything, so therefore maybe doesn't make a decision on, you know, quickly, or would kind of push it off a little bit farther. And then delay decisions until seeing all options. So because this person, this preference may not be committed to saying, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to get it done, because if they say this, then it just shut out all the possibilities of things that could come. So there's always that open-endedness of seeing options and things like that. So any questions on this? So make sure that you write down whether you're judging and perceiving, or why you, what made you kind of think that you're one way or the other in terms of your preferences. So to make this fun and so that you guys can start sharing, because I've talked way too long, but I wanted to get this out there so you guys to write this down. I'm going to break you guys out into groups. And the idea is for you just to share, because if you think about implementation of the succession planning of being coming into this new role, like I said, it's this capability, but also this level of comfort. And one of the things that makes us comfortable is if we can express ourselves for what we are, our preferences, what we are as far as what our likes and dislikes are, all these different things, so we can really show up as our whole self, because that allows, if you're showing up as your whole self, you're allowing other people to do that as well. And that makes it much more enjoyable, not only from a personal standpoint, but also a professional standpoint as well. You're creating this environment for people to authentically show up, give their all, and then also kind of rally around them to take the best of everyone and make it the product, the service, the student org that you want it to be. So what I'd like for you guys to do is I'm going to break you guys randomly in groups. It doesn't matter, because it's just about you sharing about who you are and comfortable with that. Because one of the strong skills of a leader is first know your own preferences, who you are as a person, what you like, you don't like, so that way you can express it and share it with people. So I want you to share with each other, you know, what are your preferences, and maybe start, you know, going around each person by just saying if you're an introvert, an extrovert, and why. And how did you answer the questions? So the questions about when you take that break, what do you do with your time? Or if you took that vacation and you were paying for the group, you know, did you ask what the budget was? Or did you say, where should we go? As well as the other ones I think are important, what classes did you really enjoy in your college career so far? And then the last one is, when your friend or a colleague, you know, someone in the organization, your student org, bugs you, what do you do? How do you deal with it? And so I want you guys to share that with each other, and then, you know, how can you share with others about your preferences? Because we practiced it now, then when you go to speak with your student orgs and you guys are working through stuff, there's already a conversation piece that you've been working on, which you can in fact teach them what you learned today. So you guys ready to get into your groups, share? Okay, everybody, don't get too excited. Let me minimize this really fast. I think I can, no, let me do this, get this off. Yeah. Any questions while I am going through this? Moving you guys into breakouts. Any thoughts, any questions? All right. Oh no, I'm gonna cancel. Sorry, I froze. I need to redo this. Recreate. Oh, there we go. Okay, so you guys are in rooms.
Oh, there we go. Okay. I thought I was alone, Sashong.
Oh.
Here, let me go get my glasses really quick. But yeah, do you wanna start?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so for me, okay, so I'm an introvert
Mhm.
because I would, I know I feel comfortable reaching out to people through text, and like when I speak, I'm comfortable speaking like one-on-one rather than in a group, you know. And then next is when I take a break, right?
Yeah.
Next one. Okay.
Yep.
I basically watch YouTube or social media.
Gotcha.
For the travel question, I would go with where should we go?
hmm
Um,
Oh, there was what was it? Intuition versus
Judging.
judging.
yeah, that would be intuition for me.
Gotcha.
Let me see.
I'm not gonna
And
jump in.
then
Oh, never mind.
I think a lot,
Mm-hmm.
like basically constantly. So no,
Gotcha.
that's what I would go with. And also, yeah, I usually use I use a lot of logic based approach
Mm-hmm.
rather than feeling stuff. Um, if someone is bothering me, I would tell them to stop. Just
Just direct.
straightforward, yeah. Yeah.
Got it.
And then I would go with judging, even
Gotcha.
though I find myself a lot waiting until the last minute.
Mm-hmm.
But
Oh, what class did you really enjoy?
oh yeah, I would say stuff that I could apply in the industry or something, in the real world.
Mm-hmm.
And for the class itself, if the instruction is pretty straightforward, right, rather than delving into all the theoretical stuff, it'll be much easier for me to understand. Well, obviously, it's like
Definitely.
that's really what I'd enjoy. That's it.
Sounds good. Okay. All right, my turn, I guess. So I would say I'm pretty in between on the introvert extrovert. I feel like I'm openly expressive, but I do reflect internally like a lot of the time. I don't really like get out in groups and then feel energized, but like if I'm in a group setting, I feel like I'll put my all into the group setting. So maybe like there are like half and half kind of the
I see.
points, I think. I think for taking a break, I also watch YouTube or play games, but I'll do something like easy to do so that I can also be thinking about things. Because that's sort of the time that I like take to think about like my day or about like whatever is important to me at that time. So I'll do something sort of like low key, like maybe like Minecraft or something like that you don't need to be thinking about. For me, I put intuition because I like thinking about future possibilities and I find it easier to process information when it's in the bigger picture and when it's sort of like in a pattern. Like I try to find a pattern based on what we've done in the past, what's worked, what's not worked, like in future event planning and just in general. For the vacation, I also said, where should we go? I guess leaning towards also the budget question. If I was the one that was sort of planning the trip, but if the company was just like, you guys, it's all paid for, like it's all ready to go, then I would just ask, where should we go?
If budget,
Yeah, like if I wasn't like in charge of it and they just told me like money's not an issue, we'll pay for everything, like I guess I wouldn't care about the budget. I put decision making as thinking because I am very logical and causal, but that's a little weird because I also put judging. So like it's it's a little bit of like they go hand in hand, I think, for me at least. Because I like being very logical about things when I'm thinking about it and then just doing it all so it's not last minute and just sort of getting it out of the way. But like maybe keeping my mind open for improvement once it gets closer to the deadline. I'll obviously like keep revisiting my plans and stuff.
Okay.
For classes that I really enjoyed, any class that has given me sort of creative liberty. Like I'm taking a design class right now, and the professor's prompts are super open-ended, so it sort of leaves me to do whatever I kind of want to do. Like we're doing a solar panel array system, and he's sort of like letting me design that however I choose and however I see like fit, basically. I feel like that's more helpful to me than just giving me tasks to do, basically. The question about the classmate or friend bugging me, I would sort of like ask them a question or something that sort of like prompts them to explain why they're doing a certain action before I do anything else, I guess. And sort of like explain like if that wasn't adequate enough, I guess. I would sort of prompt them further and sort of tell them why I'm getting bugged by the situation so that I also hear their perspective about why they're doing a certain thing or like
Okay.
why they're not doing a certain thing, I guess. But yeah, that's it for me. I feel like I'm very in between on a lot of these for
Oh.
sure, which is really weird because like the whole intuition thing, I feel like I'm very big picture, but I'm also very like subjective at times, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like it's very big picture and I like narrow in when someone like comes to me like one-on-one,
Yeah.
which is like I hope it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing at least.
Oh, yeah. Even I found a lot of overlapping between
Yeah.
two things. Yeah, also, do you take the personality test before?
I've never taken the personality test before.
Okay.
So something that I can add in regards to how you can use Myers-Briggs, and I apologize, I know in the background there's like a leaf blower.
Oh, I couldn't even hear it.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Oh, my bad.
So-
I think that's from my audio. Oh, sorry. I think the noise was from my audio.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
A really great way that in applying Myers-Briggs is just recognizing where your strengths are and when you're working with others. I know some people aren't always about taking Myers-Briggs because they don't want to be boxed in, but it's really helpful if you know that you yourself, if you're in between an extrovert and introvert, if you find yourself, I identify as an extrovert, but definitely recognize that sometimes I just want to, the place where I'm going to recharge is on my own. So you can definitely have that ambivert skill. But when working with others, for example, I know at the Idea Center, I'm one of the only extroverts in the office. So then it's knowing, okay, my team is generally an introvert. So then I'm more cautious, not cautious, but think more about how when I want to have all this energy and I'm talking to them, and I know it's been like 5 minutes that I've ranted about this new show that I just watched, then I recognize, wait a minute, let me check in with myself. I talk too much already. Let me go and just thinking about whether my colleagues are getting their energy from. And then from there, just when you're working with your board, when you're working with those on your committee, like just thinking about where they might get their energy. Are they big picture thinkers? Are they thinking more logistically? I think you all have noticed that there are some people that are really great at asking the really big questions, right? And the people that are like, but wait a minute, what about this, this, and this, and this, and that? And it's like thinking about those strengths and putting those people on a team. Or if you know that you get stuck on, you're better about the details, then having someone else that's an N in the Myers-Briggs who's thinking big picture to help complement that. So in terms of succession planning, knowing where for you, especially with moving forward with COVID, I really want to challenge you all, because we've all seen those emails by the chancellor. Staff is still trying to figure out, what does this next upcoming year look like? Registration has been pushed back. But we all know that fall is intended to look like a variety. It's a hybrid of both on campus, remote. So then it's, if you know you're about the logistics, then maybe again, complementing what does an event look like in a hybrid model. So I think that's really something that I want to challenge you all to be thinking about for the coming year, is if you can't meet with people in person or invite industry speakers or work on your specific projects in person, well, how else can that look like? So really thinking out of the box and using your Myers-Briggs in knowing each other. Or if you know that your best friend is an extrovert, checking in on them because COVID means that they're not, seeing friends as much. Or if you know you're an introvert, to say that introverts aren't okay. There's also a lot to say. Would be unfair to say that because someone is an introvert, they're okay with not being in touch with friends. So that shouldn't also be a thing either. It's just more about where people are getting their energy. Same with the big picture thinking, whether or not someone's a feeler. In engineering, you might say that engineering has less feelers potentially, but then you could have feelers in the group, and then so being more aware that what you say might come off a certain way to someone who is a feeler. So just recognizing where the strengths are. Mm-hmm. What are some things, you both are new to HKN, correct? Ada, I'm sorry, yeah, Ada Kapanen.
We were both officers for this whole year.
Okay.
But we're both transitioning into the executive board for next year.
So in thinking about how you apply what you're learning so far in this workshop and applying that for the upcoming school year, what are your thoughts on how in the application of the material? Especially in combination with distant learning or this hybrid model of being on campus but then not.
Yeah, I think that was a very good point that you made, that since these all go like hand in hand, they like sort of complement each other. And I feel like having those two people on teams, because right now we're choosing sort of committees for our bigger events for next year, sort of having the lead people have both aspects would definitely help, especially like having at least one big picture thinker and then one like focused on the specifics, making sure that everything in the smaller details also gets done to sort of take care of the bigger picture is very helpful, I think, and something that I sort of didn't think about before. I was just sort of thinking of the bigger picture myself and didn't think like, because we have someone on the team now, his name is Keshav. He sort of like hyper focuses on the like details, and it's very like helpful to make sure that everything gets done that needs to get done. So finding someone like that to work on some of our bigger events would definitely be helpful.
Mm-hmm. What about in your particular positions? I'm sorry, can you pronounce your name? Sanchak?
Shashank.
Shashank.
Yes.
So how do you see this applying for your role?
The moment, I would say thinking of new ideas, what kind of events I would like to host, because that's what I'm responsible for.
Mm-hmm.
That's what my officer position is.
And then are you a big picture thinker or more about the logistics?
Mostly, I would say a big picture thinker, but I definitely focused on attention to detail.
Okay.
Really. So there's like that's what I've noticed. There was a lot of overlap in that specific personality trait.
How do you envision hosting some of the events that Ada Company generally hosts for the fall?
How do I envision?
Given the hybrid model, have you thought about how some of the events could look like?
So what I've tried experimenting with this year, or what I've done this year, was come up with new ideas for events, and then focus on the details of what equipment I should provide, what what I had to do different from the other events that have been done before, like what specific supplies and equipment and stuff that we need, compared to what has been done before.
Mm-hmm.
That makes any sense?
That makes sense.
Yeah, I think what we've sort of started to do by like beginning our Discord channel was sort of have a way to communicate with a whole bunch of new potential members, officers, inductees, like the whole JSOE community in general through the Discord. And we've sort of shifted our focus into hosting online events this quarter. So potentially for the hybrid system, I was thinking we could also still, like we could still live stream our in-person events, and then whoever wants to or can show up, and then whoever can't will obviously be live streamed so that they can also get the experience as well. And we sort of keep them engaged.
Perfect. That's good. And then Eta Kappa Nu generally has a conference that y'all go to in winter, correct?
Yep, SLC. So actually we're going to be hosting it at UCSD next year. So we're the hosting chapter.
Really?
And Tim is in charge of that. Tim was in the bigger session. So
okay.
Yeah.
So then when do you all start planning for that? When will you start planning for it?
It's been getting planned for the last couple months, and I think it'll continue on through this quarter, through summer, and through into fall as well. Trying to find like a location, venue, transportation. He's sort of broken up the teams into smaller subsections with each officer leading a single part. So I think that's a good structure.
Have you all thought about what it looks like if it generally happens in winter?
Yeah.
So have you thought about what it looks like if it needs to become virtual, or if it needs to be virtual?
Mm-hmm. I think Tim has considered the possibility of sort of making a live stream version, because they're also going to have an interactive website as well, so that people can sort of interact with each other if they can't make it, which is something that we sort of encountered this year. Some people weren't able to go to the conference. So having a sort of virtual center would be helpful for people that can't show up to also get valuable experience.
Okay, that's good. I think for the council meeting in a few weeks, where Rocio from the corporate affiliates program will be invited, she will be discussing sponsorship and what it looks like to reach out to industry. And I think that'll be a really valuable opportunity for you all to connect about what sponsorship looks like right now for all the orgs, right?
Mm-hmm.
How is that looking like for your org in terms of your traditional partnerships?
So Sean, do you wanna take this? VP External. I don't know much about our current partnerships. That's something I've sort of been learning more about as I'm entering the role. But I think Shashank has a little bit more information from our previous VP External, and he's been focusing on that.
Okay. Could you repeat the question again? About connections?
Oh yeah, it was about our current partnerships going into COVID-19 and stuff like that.
So how are the partnerships that y'all have built with industry going right now? Have y'all reached out to them? What has that communication looked like?
I haven't really reached out to them directly at the moment, but so far looking at all the spreadsheets, it looks like we're still maintaining all the connections that we had from last year. And I think you're muted.
Yeah.
And what I plan to do is expand and connect with more companies. Like one thing is that since this is remote, one advantage is that I could reach out to recruiters that are not necessarily in California. So, there'll be a lot more opportunities for students to connect.
Yeah, so that's something that is really, you touched on a really good point. Maybe in the next upcoming school year, even if once we do go back to campus, eventually it's not that things will go back to normal. It would just be us moving forward with whatever that looks like. I recently read that and I really liked it. Like, it's about moving forward, not going back to normal. A lot of companies might have restrictions on travel. So then you'll have more opportunities to connect with industry because of Zoom. Like, that's something that more people are doing. So still providing that professional development in that area. Even if they're not able to donate money for a project, they'll want to make themselves available at least via Zoom. So let's go ahead and return to the main session.
Yeah, it was really interesting to hear how everyone's sort of thinking that they were kind of a little bit on each of the spectrums.
Okay.
And sort of like going through that process of thinking through it with everybody gave a much better idea of like what type of person they are and what kind of things they're thinking about in each situation. And I think that's even more valuable than being able to sort of just bin people up into like 16 different categories is sort of like
Yeah.
that thought process.
Good point. We're so complex. I don't know about you guys, but even just the volatility of staying at home, looking at a computer all day. Some days I'm happy, some days I'm sad. Within the same day, I'm happy and sad simultaneously. So yeah, we're just, there's lots of different preferences that happen, all the time. So you're right. There's more than the 16 combinations if you think of them on a continuum. So really great point. What else? What are some other things you guys discovered?
I also sort of found out that talking about other people's preferences gives you insight into your own preferences as well, because they may sometimes bring up different angles on how to think of these sort of different categories or pairs in each of the different, I guess, categories, which you didn't consider earlier, but then once they mention that, you're like, oh, I do that a lot. And yeah, that kind of helps you, I guess, narrow down your own personality a little more.
I wanted to say I enjoyed learning about people's decision-making strategies. I think people underestimate just how complicated decisions, like simple decisions, you have to make.
Sorry, did you guys hear me?
Oh, okay.
I didn't.
Mm-mm.
Could you go ahead and say that again, Matthew?
Oh, okay, yeah, sure. I think people underestimate how difficult everyday decisions can be. So it was really nice to see how people act when someone's bothering them or something like that.
It's a really great point. Other things you guys learned or discovered?
Yeah, so we sort of talked a lot about how just because you might be more on one side than the other, knowing those differences sort of shows you what your strengths are and shows you what other people on your team may bring to a project or in general to the whole structure of the board. Having someone from every sort of combination, not every but like having more combinations, having a more diverse team sort of allows you to think about things you might have missed.
Really great point. Yeah, that's that diversity of thinking and really bringing the team together. And so really tapping into their preferences helps them show up naturally. So you don't have to maybe work at getting someone to be their authentic self. You just let them be it. It's the easiest job you can have. What else?
I'd like to add that I've noticed that there was a lot of overlapping for me between personality types. For example, for me, I look at the big picture side of things, but at the same time, focus on attention to details. So I have both those sides. And it turns out that I wasn't the only one that had that sort of overlapping. So yeah, that's what I've noticed.
Yeah, that's a really great point. There are some that have that overlapping, which is great because you're able to zoom in, zoom out to really see perspectives, which is great because then you're able to work with different groups of people that have specific or very strong preferences for only details or for only big picture. So if you can help bridge that gap for them, that's that development part that I was talking about, how you guys are always thinking about succession planning, but you can always develop and help people become their next best self by allowing them to explore the things that we learned today, but then you being your, just you being you, it's so much, there's so much value in that teaching that you have that you can share with others. So that's a really great point. Overlapping is great. What else?
I mean, for me, I think I just like learning people's perspective on things, because like I think in the past, like I have struggled with like just putting myself in other people's shoes and like just think in terms of their perspective before like thoroughly before something like make a decision or something happens. So that's cool.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. So I want to be respectful of our time and let you know that I am a resource. You can always find me, not walking around campus right now, but you can find me on Zoom. No, I'm just kidding. There's lots of ways that you can get in touch with me through the Gordon Center, through G-Ling, through Alejandra. So if there are, as you guys are working through your orgs going forward and you want any kind of fun insight or doing something like that with your team, what we did today, where your team gets together, just you guys by yourself, I'll be more than happy to do it. I think it's fun if you have an opportunity to kind of create that avenue of communication and being able to just be able to talk about yourself, but also invite other people to talk about themselves, because then we get to really learn not only about how to work with people, but also how people can work with us. So I thank you all for coming today, and I hope that you had fun and be safe and stay in touch, okay?
Thanks, Jeanette.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Have a good day.
Thank you.